welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie. I was trying to think of a Van Helsing-esque name there, and I fucking fucked it straight off the bat.
You're not quite as good as Hugh Jackman.
No, not as quite huge as Hugh Jackman.
No one's as huge as that sexual man, Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman. So tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of the best film of all time. No, I'm not talking about King Kong versus Godzilla or King Kong X Godzilla, The New Empire. I'm talking obviously about Van Helsing. Star-studded cast by Sommers, the man who brought The Mummy back into action. Obviously much better than the dog shit Tom Cruise one, you know.
Far better than that one.
I feel weird starting the episode, you know. I never started.
Yeah, you kind of jumped in there. I'm offended.
I'm excited of the film.
I'm like, I don't know what to do now.
I'll hand the reins back over to you. Restart.
You jump back in there. Stephen Sommers' range is what I was thinking of when I thought of this film. I was just like, I forgot that this was a Stephen Sommers film, and I've talked about the fact that I actually like his films, even though they are quite critically derided. Apart from the first Mummy, I think every other film he's made, has been like not well received.
Well, I know he did The Mummy, but what else did he do? I mean, he
did The Mummy and The Mummy Returns.
Obviously,
he did not do the shitty third Mummy.
I like the way you said that The Mummy Returns isn't the shitty one. The Scorpion.
No, I mean, it's got its shitty parts, but it's not nearly as shit as the Tomb of the Dragon Empire. Like crappy
with Jet Li,
with knockoff, you know, and no Rachel Weisz. Instead, it's got Maria Bello doing a really bad English accent.
Yeah,
just generally just felt off. Like he did G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
which I actually think the first G.I. Joe is a really cheesy, corny, but quite fun film. Don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's not bad.
Apparently he Rise of Cobra. Is that it?
Yeah. He did the first one, which was about... The second one was absolute shit. But the first one, I'm not saying it was a great film, but it was a big old, like, entertaining, blockbustery cheeseball, you know.
Yeah.
It was a popcorn flick, and it was exactly what it should be. He did the 90s jungle live-action Jungle Book.
There's a naked man in a loincloth on the letterboxed header, if you want to have a little look.
He also did Deep Rising, which is one I've talked about before, which I really like.
Yeah, you have. You spoke about that.
The old Monster on a Ship classic one. He's done a fair few ones. I like the one he's done. He hasn't done. I didn't actually find out why, but he hasn't done a film since 2013. So
interesting.
It's a long time since he's done them. I think he might produce some films and stuff like that since then, but he's not done any directing gigs since then. To be fair, I think his G.I. Joe was like okay, a good hit for him kind of thing, but of his own films he made, I think he kind of lost a bit of steam around the time of this film.
Which is weird because I when obviously we started watching it, I mean I didn't know that it was a Stephen Sommers film. It just kind of I haven't watched this film for like a good few years. That I will be honest that the film does hold a special place in my heart. It came out obviously 20 years ago, so it came out just before my 12th birthday, and I wanted to go see it in the cinema with my friends for my birthday, but by the time it was my birthday, because I'm a June baby, as you can probably tell, you know, Gemini, got that kind of vibe. It was already gone, so I don't know what I did in the end, but I didn't want to watch it.
And you didn't have any friends.
And I didn't have any friends, so
your mum had to explain to you that she wasn't really your parent. And it was a change.
It's a long thing. It's a long thing, you know? So, and then I wanted to get the game. But the game didn't come out in time for my birthday, so I couldn't get it. And I never actually played it. You know, it just exists in my mind as the best game that I never played.
The best game I ever played. I believe it was kind of like Devil May Cry.
Yeah, which sounds bad.
Yeah, I mean, that was an awesome game.
But once I realised it was a Stephen Sommers film, and I looked at it, and then I was like, yeah, I can kind of see that this is very much like The Mummy was his spin on that universal kind of monster, and then this is almost as if he was doing like a precursor to the Dark Universe in a way, in his style, because you've got Dracula, you've got the Wolfman, you've got the Brides of Dracula, you've got Frankenstein, you've got Van Helsing himself, you've got who's Dr. Jackman and Mr. Hyde. So you've got like an amalgamation of the kind of famous characters. I half expected the Invisible Man to pop up at one point.
He was in the film the whole time.
Yeah, he was. I didn't see him. He was naked, obviously. He was bonnet naked.
That's, hanging dong.
That's what the clapping was whenever Hugh Jackman was running.
Hugh Jackman also played the Invisible Man.
Hanging dong all the time.
You just need to look out for that hanging dong at one point.
Yeah.
When blood splatters, there's just a dong that just appears covered in like the goo of one of the Dracula babies.
Yeah, you can't tell. It's just a bit of a vein that gives it away. That's how they got it past.
But yeah, this film was made following the success of The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, and Universal have tried many, many times to reinvent the universe. Their monster universe. They've tried so many times, and this was actually one of the attempts to reboot that universe. So The Mummy, obviously a huge hit, great film. Mummy Returns, another one, not such a great film, but it's still an enjoyable action rompy flick.
And it launched the career of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
It absolutely did. I don't know how, because he's technically he's only in one scene as himself. The rest of it is some weird fucking the worst CGI ever made.
Yeah. But he does the people's eyebrow as for some reason, which
as
is
that unanimous. That blob of a creature. We say it's a scorpion. He looks like a weird blob running around the room.
Yeah.
This was the attempt. So they thought we've done it with that one. So we'll bring in Stephen Sommers, and he'll recreate that magic, but we'll introduce like loads of our creatures. And the idea that this was going to expand off. So they were so certain that this film was going to be a hit that they kept the sets. So normally they get rid of recycle sets, but they kept the sets, they kept the Transylvania sets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They kept all of that on their lot ready. They greenlit a sequel before the film had even been out. They were this convinced. They were like, we've got Stephen Sommers. The Mummy was a huge hit. He's doing another action-y kind of one.
Yeah.
There's no way this isn't going to be a hit. We've got sequels coming. They were going to make a TV series called Transylvania set in the same universe. They were literally like mapping out before they even were doing that.
Before the MCU.
They were going to be precursors to all of this. They were, which is weird because if I'm honest, actually, the MCU kind of thing or superhero movies really was in my head when a lot of this film plays out, because there's so many action scenes. Some of it feels proper like superhero shots of like Frankenstein gliding down wires, and what I mean, like those big like scale
very
shots,
bombastic,
really like in this film. But yeah, obviously, I mean, this film wasn't a disaster at the box office. It made about 300 million worldwide. It was made about 160, 170, but not enough to launch a whole universe of like, we're now going to make the Frankenstein film, and we're now going to make the Hugh Jackman, and we're going to bring One Last Back from the Dead just so she can have her own franchise and all that all that kind of thing that kind of comes into this world. But it didn't happen to the point. So it failed, and then they tried to do another one.
I'll be honest, it's weird because if you think of the people who were in this film, if you think about I was about to say Van Helsing, because if that was the actual actor.
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman, obviously, I think this was off the back of the first X-Men.
I think seconded when I've
okay.
Yeah.
But
so
he was still
the bigger one as well.
Yeah, he was still hot property.
Yeah.
And he was going to get hotter. And then Kate Beckinsale, I think she was
hot then.
Was it? Because she's also in Underworld, isn't she?
But that was the
first.
That was about the peak of her career around the early 2000s. Was the peak.
I think they could have rode it for one more, man.
I mean, I think it is a case of a studio like not thinking, especially as they'd actually put money into it already. They'd already started some kind of pre-production on the idea of one. Obviously, they had the intention, because there's also the little spin-off. There's an animated Van Helsing in London, which I haven't seen, but which was on the DVD or came with the DVD when you bought it back in the day. And I said about the TV stuff, and they've kept the sets and stuff. So technically, they'd already kind of used money, and they'd already saved money. So it sounds like it's wasting just as much money to be like, we're just not going to do it. We're going to scrap this completely.
Kind of.
It's I know it's still like, no, there's about 200 million more pounds we need to put on it. That's fuck all, right? But it is weird that they kind of gave up on it that way. And I got to be honest. I mean, let's be honest. When I was watching this film, now this is not. I would say The Mummy is more grounded than this film.
I mean,
You know,
obviously.
it's not like the concept technically is very supernatural, but there's something that is somewhat. You know, I didn't really get this. There was a quote from someone saying, "So, the Mummy world was like inspired by Indiana Jones," which you completely get. That,
Yeah,
100%. You get that idea. And then they said Van Helsing was more inspired by James Bond.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't get that. Like, I mean, I guess he's got gadgets.
I guess he's got gadgets.
And he's got a bit of a suave,
he shags everything in sight.
But, you know, I don't get the style, the idea that this is... I'd almost,
Yeah.
Even if they said this one is also kind of Indiana Jones, then I could kind of get the adventurer kind of thing. Or if this one was Sherlock Holmes inspired, like that kind of thing. Like, I could imagine that. But
James Bond is a weird one.
Yeah, it's like saying that he's like this action kind of thing. But yeah, I couldn't get that link at all. But
no.
But I do at the same time believe that, yes, this one goes a little bit more creative. This one is definitely cheesier than the first one.
Yeah, I think this one...
the second Mummy was a bit cheesier, so it's getting a bit closer to this one.
But I think this leads into... I mean, not just is it obviously a lot more about more creatures. You have the Mummy, obviously, but then the rest of it is kind of... I don't want to say like historically accurate, but it's kind of it's Indiana Jones in its kind of theme and in its characters and in some of how some of the gunfights are. Whereas this one, like Van Helsing, I feel like it's happy to lean a bit more into the camp and into the over the top and exaggerated.
It's going full on 30s and 40s Universal horror movie. It's like Wolfman meets Frankenstein, that kind of style of film, and that's the kind of stuff that inspired it. And so I totally get that with the original Mummy, whereas that was more standalone, more of the slightly creepier, but also it did make it into an action film. They reinvented the Mummy with an action film kind of lens on it. So then they thought with this one, it's like, well, we'll keep it the same. We'll keep it in that. We'll have some kind of humour to it. Obviously, the Mummy has a humour to it and stuff like that. I think that the humour definitely lands more with the Mummy than it does here. I think their attempts at humour is somewhat childish quite a bit more here. It feels like it's it's weird because it feels like it's sometimes to me feels like you said, you 12-year-old boy. It feels like this was made for that 12-year-old boy. And it feels like it was made for that humour, but then there's also some quite like darker, more violent elements in this film that then makes it feel like it's more violent than some of the stuff you might have got in the other film. And
I think you have to talk about the differences between the films. I think the Mummy, you have Brendan Fraser, who doesn't fall into this very typical action hero vibe. He isn't like Brendan O'Connor, whatever his name is. He isn't kind of like he isn't dark, he isn't mysterious. He's like a hunky like bit of a ditz, like he's
Rick O'Connor.
Rick O'Connor, that's it. He's a bit of like a himbo, and his humour comes from being like Brendan Fraser is just a very naturally characteristic guy who has good acting, who has good comedy chops. He's got good timing, he knows what he's doing, and it's almost like Brendan Fraser and then the people around him, He's the main comedy.
I think he does mainly make it work, and some of the other comedy, even in The Mummy, some of it surrounding it is a little bit cheesy. It has a slight cheesiness that does kind of, but luckily because they take the horror a little bit more as like actual like I think more creepy horror in that. It's a little bit more. Does feel more actual, like this is like a really tense.
Well, I think that's
scene.
the
Whereas in this one, it's like completely ungrounded.
It's over the top.
It's over the top kind of horror style, but at the same time, Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale as the leads. If you've got like you've got like Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz in the original. I think they both work quite well as kind of the leading groups. I think the actors are both doing a good job here. I do find though, to us, like unlike in The Mummy, where I think they were also surrounded by quite a strong cast, I find that the problem with this film is that Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale are really strong, and I find a lot of the people around them are overly cheesy and overly like caricatures of what the creatures they're meant to be. That's the bit that gets me with this film.
I kind of liked it. Like because I think it leads into it being over the top. I think pretty much everybody is over the top. I mean, if we look at the opening, like one of the things that I think is great is the soundtrack of this film is a bit kind of different. It's very like foreboding. It's very orchestral. It's quite like grand in its scope. You know, it feels bigger than you would be watching a slightly camp film. You know,
well, I think this film is bigger than actually the film is bigger than I remembered it being,
Same.
as in terms of scale.
Oh yeah,
and in terms of what they actually try to do within the film at like. You know, again, 2004 was not that early, but it feels like there's a lot of CGI in this. Like, it feels like before there was this much CGI in a film.
Yeah,
like, it pushes a lot. I'm not necessarily that's bad for it. I'm just saying he tries for some huge ass action. This is like a action to action to action.
Pretty
you know,
much.
whereas well, just for like the last Mummy one, whereas the Mummy was kind of like action set piece. Then kind of like more talking, then more kind of a creepy scene,
bit of a horror.
Long horror. Then to some action, and it was a bit more spread out. And this one is just basically like action scene, some exposition, action scene, action scene, bigger action scene. Can we make this any bigger? Yeah, we can make this bigger. Like, what's the next big scene?
Like talking like how that kind of happens is. You get an opening, and I think the opening fucks. You open up with like this great score. You get a throwback to the black and white where these creatures kind of came from, in the throwback to the Universal, and you get. I fucking love Dracula in this. I know a lot of people slate him.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
he's
not a fan.
I think he's so like he just chews the scene, and he's so over the top and so kind of campy. That I just find it so, campy. And I just find it so endearing that instead of like trying to be this like dark foreboding figure, he's just gone like, why don't I basically be like really like theatrical? Yeah, instead of being like Gary Oldman.
No, he literally said he was trying to, I read what he actually said. He said he liked Gary Oldman's performance, so he was kind of emulating that.
But it's so different. Because it's so.
I mean, it's not that different.
Okay,
it's about as good as Gary Oldman.
No, but I love them both, which means they're both great.
Gary Oldman's a far better actor than this guy. To be fair, that's why Gary Oldman pulls it off somewhat.
Yeah,
whereas
maybe that's it. But you get this, you get this kind of scene which establishes who everybody is, and you get like a little throwback with "It's alive, it's alive."
Yeah.
And then I like, like when Dracula kills Frankenstein, and we see like the shadows of it. And we see, we don't see Frankenstein's monster properly, and we see Castle Dracula or Castle Frankenstein, whichever one it is. We see Dracula get thrown into the fire, and he comes out like a skeleton. Yeah. And then we see like all of the people chasing after to destroy, Frankenstein. And I think it's massive, and it's like quite a bombastic scene. I love it that just somehow this old mill is full of absinthe, so it explodes somehow. And then after that, we get we're straight into another action set piece where Van Helsing scraps fucking awesome. Dr. Hyde. Yeah, that's awesome.
I know, obviously, again, the CGI has aged, but that's one thing about this film is that, yes, the CGI has aged, yes, it doesn't look perfect, but it looked pretty good for the time, I thought. I thought a lot of the shots looked pretty cool.
The only part where I thought that the CGI started to look really quite bad was towards the very end when when Dracula turns.
For me, it was mainly certain ones. I think it was alright with the werewolf and Dracula kind of battles and stuff. I think again you could tell the CGI, and you could tell it wasn't really there and stuff like that. But even with the Dracula in his like full on vampiric,
they look good until the fight.
Pretty. It was alright. Some of the shots are okay. The ones I think that don't work quite as well were the brides of Dracula, the bats, the women flying around.
Good, to be honest.
I thought a lot of those looked like just the flying scenes mainly, but anyway, that was one of the things that was really like a bugbear for me. Like, how many fucking times can they fly down and just grab someone and take them to a place, and then they get them back, and then go to a place and fucking get them back?
Well, that's it.
And it was so fucking like, oh my god, seriously. Kate Beckinsale's like, this is about the third time she's been dragged off, and last time she got back, and now okay, this time you're keeping her, but still, and it's like, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, okay, now they've got Hugh Jackman and they've decided to swoop down. It's like, fucking hell, someone just remember that there's a fucking flying bats around.
But that's it. We get the scene where Van Helsing fights Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is really cool.
Robbie Coltrane,
great
for a short performance. I really liked that battle. I thought that was really cool.
It's fun. It shows that Van Helsing's like a little smart lad.
Yeah, and kind of shows him off, shows that he's but he's fully in the battle. And even the oddness of the steampunkiness of having these like blade swords and that kind of thing. But it works. It does just work in the thing. Like I said, Stephen Sommers has a weird way of being able to make something that should be really cheesy, and it is cheesy, but still makes the action good enough that it's actually this is fun.
Yeah, that's it. And then
it's proper blockbustery to me. It's the kind of film that and this film is, for the most part, it is it is that kind of fun flick that is kind of one, but it's nothing more than that, like popcorn flick.
That's it, But I think we have that scene, and then we have a scene where we meet Faramir. That's all I'm going to call him. We meet Faramir, and he's like, we hear about this family line, and it's like, oh, they said they were going to kill Dracula, and there's 2 of them left. We have a look around, like the weapons that are going to come in. You see the real badass crossbow, the stakes, They say, like, Van Helsing, you're a naughty boy. To redeem yourself, you've got to kill Dracula. And imagine that. Imagine being like, your boss is like, you've got to go kill Dracula to redeem yourself. And then, literally after that, I think, is another action scene with the werewolf. Where they're trying to lure him.
This is a film stitched together on action.
It's action.
It's this isn't like this is. It's only because it uses horror monsters that you could almost deem it within horror, because it's an action film. It's an action horror, but it's like it's literally like it's just because they're creature-like designs. Like there's definitely nothing about this film that is scary or creepy. It is 100% just because it's a monster movie in the the cheesiest fashion of the classic monster, which is what it is trying to be. To be fair, which is why that works absolutely fine within that kind of part of it. It's David. What's his name? Faramir.
Let's call him Faramir.
Faramir, again, he's another character that is basically mainly just used as either the guy to give him gadgets or the guy to make really shit jokes.
And that's it. He's the comedy relief.
The comedy relief, but I didn't find him funny. I thought mainly he was just there to just act a bit goofy and act a bit. He is like the character in The Mummy, which is
Fez or whatever his name is.
Yeah, the one he's wearing a fez.
He's wearing a fez.
I can't actually remember what his name is. Benny, Benny. He's who is actually in this film. He's Igor in this film. Same actor.
Oh, nice.
He's in all of Stephen Sommers' films.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The Igor character in this one. But yeah, he's like the Benny, but weirdly Benny I think worked better because he was always just getting shit on because he was a dick.
Benny was a little dickhead.
Whereas this guy just feels like the jester falling over and like falling down. Even though he's meant to be a brilliant scientist, he's also like, although
he's a klutz. He's a klutz. We don't take
he
a
pipes
lap.
though.
Yeah, he fucking pipes.
He just randomly he's just like a lass comes up to like, how can I repay you? And
he's just like he's just like gets his cock out.
He's just I'm just gonna.
He's just like, let's just fuck. How
he's
about
that? And she's like, you're not allowed to do that, are you? And he's just like, well, I want to get me little Friar Tuck in the chapel, love.
Yeah, he's just like, let's just fuck.
He's like, don't matter. It's like, even if I'm not allowed to do this, I'm not in my town.
Yeah, I'm not in my town. Nobody knows.
God don't know shit.
Yeah, God can't see me.
God is not here. Good, I can get me dick out.
And he's just there's just like a 20-25 minute segment where he's just fucking pestering this girl for sex, and it's really uncomfortable, and you're like, Stephen Sommers, why did you include this, man? And he's like, I've created this new machine and it's like a condom, and it's like, why are you showing Hugh Jackman this? That's the director's cut that I watched. I don't know if that was in the one that you watched.
The director's cut.
The director's cut.
The diddler's cut.
The diddler's cut, yeah.
This is like I said, my relationship with this film. I have not seen this film in possibly close to the anniversary of this film,
which is tomorrow.
You know, yeah,
the 7th.
I think I'm somewhere between 15 to 20 years of seeing this film, because when I was this should have been to me, and I remember from my friends like I think my friend Josh loved this film, and I know loads of people who were loved this film of my age, and I was just like. I just remember watching it and just being like, this is just shit. This is just mindless action scenes, and this is just literally
mindless action scenes.
This is just rubbish.
Hot women.
This is just rubbish dialogue, terrible script and things like that. And this is just that was just it. And I was as much as I thought I should like this film, I was just something just doesn't work. Might have been because, it was about the time I started liking horror, and I was like, this isn't fucking horror. This is shit.
Horror, yeah.
This isn't fucking Dracula. This isn't fucking Frankenstein. This is bullshit. You know what I mean? There was so I just didn't like about this, and which is why I've had this film on my kind of. This film is within the crap fest of what we call action horror, which is of that time, which is your Resident Evils, your Underworld, your Legion, or whatever you fucking had, or Preacher, or I can't remember what. Paul Bettany starred in several random films, but all of shit quality, like an Underworld film. And I think I've only seen half of an Underworld film, and Kate Beckinsale, you're better in this than you are in that, because I just thought they were all shite.
I watched one. I randomly decided to watch the second or third one a couple of years ago. I was ill from work, and that's just what I think I was borrowing your Now TV, and that was on there, and I watched it, and I was like, this is a fucking crock of shit.
That's when you decided to end your life. I was already ill, and I was like, nah, that's it, I'm done.
I was like, I'm either going to watch this and I'm going to quit my job and work at CEX, and it's going to be the best thing ever, or I'm just going to fucking off myself. And it came close, I had the application form, I had a noose, and I was like, which way is it going, man?
But what I can say is that I do deem, actually, having rewatched this film, and I have rewatched Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil,
we covered Resident Evil.
We've covered Resident Evil, in the past. Go find it.
Yeah, go find
it. And it's fine, but it's a fine of it's enjoyable, it's cheesy, it's terribly written, and it's kind of shit, but it's it's alright.
It's the asshole.
We keep coming back in recent episodes. The asshole. It is the asshole of an episode. You've just revealed that's an episode that goes after this episode. We're out of timeline here. We're breaking our time. We're going to go into a different universe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a real. I do deem this film, actually, having watched it now, to be above that level of crapfest, but still on that level of we're talking I guess you said ones earlier. We're talking the recent King Kong films, or the King Kong Godzilla
best films of all time,
or the Fast and Furious films, where it's so.
I would put this above Fast and Furious. I'm sorry, I have to put my foot down.
Maybe they're better written than I think some of this is.
I have to put my foot down on this being a Fast and Furious level. Come on,
I'm not saying recent Fast and Furious, but around about 5 or 6 or something like that. Kind of, it's balls to the wall. It's stupid, but it's fun. Kind of thing. And this kind of is what this film is. It is that. But I definitely deem that Stephen Sommers is a fun director who knows how to shoot an action scene.
Yeah.
Based on the timeline, that he does know what to do with CGI, considering he made The Mummy look so good when it was only 1999, and that's still again, it's not that some of it doesn't look fake, but it still mainly looks good enough to watch. Unlike, say, watching The Returns, where I don't know what happened to that part of the scene. But anyway, it does kind of hold up in that way, so it's got that fun. But I do deem that Stephen Sommers, you are a better director than you are a writer.
Yeah.
Because I do think that if you really look into the plot of this film, I know it's meant to be cheesy, but most of what the characters say, or most of the character development, is pretty nothingness.
No, I think
I'm not saying it's meant to be, but it's just not, there's a really nice, if we are comparing to his best film, The Mummy, then there's a really nice kind of character arc there, and there's a love story, and there's an interesting story to follow, and it's just the one thing that I still deem, and I do know why I didn't quite enjoy this film, is looking back, I can now really embrace the action scenes in this film, which maybe I just wasn't as bothered about action stuff back then.
Because the action scenes are good.
The action scenes are awesome. I really enjoyed most of the action scenes. When it's in action, it's enjoying it. When it's doing anything with the characters, I wasn't really bothered.
I think the main, you obviously have the opening scrap. You have a little one with a werewolf where her brother gets scratched up, or falls off the cliff, whatever. And then the main kind of one is when Van Helsing turns up and he scraps the brides of Dracula, and it's a real good fight. The brides are sexy as hell. They're kind of they're real pretty horrid. You have some campy bits that are also a bit that's a bit grim, where they swoop down and take people away and drink them, throw people through stuff, and then there's that one where they're draining the blood off,
Yeah, it has a few of those
it's
gory-ish moments, gory on sinister, a PG-13, 12A level of gore,
and they're playing with them, and it's quite, I think that fight's real cool. But I think one thing that we spoke about before was that we both forgot just how long the film is.
Yeah, this didn't feel like it was going to be a 2 hour and 10 minute long film. And it's not actually that long, because for some reason I think there's almost 20 minutes of credits on this film. It's a long ass credits. But
it's it's over 2 hours, I'm sure, man.
It is on the thing. I think it was under, for the actual film to end, it was under 2 hours actually in the end without credits. Yeah, by the time we got to the thing, because I think I still had about 18 minutes left on the film when it got to the credits.
Fair beat. Because but
that is out of 200, so it's only if it is, it's just an hour and 55 minutes, which still just felt like I said to you. So I watching this film. I think the scene you just described, where they're flying down and stuff like that. Because it feels like Van Helsing's already gone on somewhat of a journey and finding out about Dracula, and now I'm going to travel to his lair, and then here it is getting to that. But they're already talking about Dracula doing his plan about the Dracula babies, and bringing them back, and he's in the middle of trying to do that, and bringing them back, and you're like, oh god, they're coming, and they start coming back to life, and then you've got I'm just going to call them the brides, basically. They're swooping down, and it feels like you've just had lots of action scenes already, and then here we are in a big whoa, here it is. And I was doing that, I was like, okay, yeah, we're kind of building. They're going to have to go. I know there's more coming, but this is that third act. We're about to go into the castle, and we're about to go and do that.
It's going to be
we're going to stop that, and here we go. And then that's when I was like, oh, we're into this bit, and I was suddenly like, oh, I bet, I was like, oh, that's good. It feels like this is a natural progression now. And I suddenly went like, oh, I'm just going to quickly get a drink. I was like, it's fucking an hour and 10 minutes into the film. There's still an hour. There's still over an hour to go. What the fuck?
I was like, what the hell?
What the hell? I was like, it feels like we've reached our kind of, we've reached the third act, and now
it's really climactic.
Yeah.
And it feels like, oh shit.
Because it's the whole village is getting torn apart and everything, and you're like, it's almost a bit we know where we need to get to
by now.
Yeah. So you're just starting to feel that. I know that Frankenstein at that point actually hadn't come back in the film. No, I was just like, that's just.
I was like,
it's just throwaway. You're just thinking, oh, maybe then Frankenstein was just, part of a setup for something else. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Throw a bone.
Yeah,
and then I paused it, and I was like, what the fuck? It's got it's an hour. It's an hour. Because then it goes. Because
it's then again. This is this is one of the bits when Kate Beckinsale is taken by them, lifting up, and then. This isn't the first time she's taken, because then she manages to get back and gets back down to the ground, and and she gets back down, and then this is then followed by that really cool, really good, well shot, the carriage chase scene, but it's another scene that comes almost we're talking that's,
they've got Frankenstein at that point, haven't they?
What, when they do the carriage scene?
Because first you have Castle Frankenstein. And the plan is, or the Castle Dracula, whatever. And the plan is, we're gonna hook up a werewolf to a machine to power the babies by lightning. Yeah. And then obviously it doesn't work. The babies fucking die. But you have that scene where Dracula and Van Helsing come face to face, and he's like, Gabriel, and he's like telling him about like his backstory, and that very much feels like, oh, maybe that's something that they're teasing for the second film. Not the second half, because then
it then goes, because it feels like you go to the point when you're like, so now all they need to do is just go to the castle, which it feels like in a lot of films would be like, right, there's the castle. Yeah. Let's just go, like, head towards it, like get on your horses or whatever, go and head towards it, get in the carriage, let's go towards that. And then it actually turns out that there's like a whole other part of a film that then there's like, before they ever get to that castle properly to go and confront Dracula. Yeah. It feels like there's such a long time between like the first time he tries to do the dragon babies, the
dragon babies.
And actually finally getting back to that kind of plot again. I do feel like I somewhat lost what was happening in order for them to get back. I think it's Frankenstein.
I can't remember how they found Frankenstein. Because the last I remember is...
I thought he was in the middle of a cave, wasn't he? They go in the like water and he's like hidden within a cave in like a tomb or something.
Yeah, but here's what I remember happening is, I remember they free the werewolf and then the babies die, and then Van Helsing escapes from Dracula because he's like he holds the cross, which is really cool. He stakes him, I think, and doesn't do anything, and he's like, "You can't fucking kill me, lad. I'm already dead." And then he escapes, and I looked away literally for like a minute or two to write some notes, and I looked back, and they were in a cave, and they were like, we found the monster, or he's like, he's.
Well, that's after the friar's given the pipe in it.
Maybe.
I think so, because he sees the knights on the wall, and then he realizes that it's that, and he somehow manages to come to the conclusion that that's how then leads them to go that. So when Hugh Jackman, Van Helsing, comes back, kind of thing, they're like, we need to go to this, and we need to go and find, and here's the next MacGuffin of what we need to find, and. Although that scene with Dracula was one of the few scenes where I didn't mind Dracula because it was actually somewhat more serious of a scene. It was less hammy because it was more of like, you don't remember your past and you don't remember who you are. And,
I love it. I love how hammy it is. I won't lie. I think like he's camp as fuck. It's class.
He is proper camp as fuck. I just couldn't I couldn't get with any of that any time, to be honest. Half the time. This is why I'm like, I switched my brain off and almost stopped listening to the dialogue because the dialogue was awful.
Gabriel.
I just thought, I was just listening. Every time I was actually like, I tuned back in, and every time I was listening back to whatever random exposition or MacGuffin they were on about that we need to go to next, I was like, and I'm switching back off again because that's just fucking bullshit. Whatever you've just said is just not, like, you're just mixing these genres together, these monsters together into this weird, like, and now we must find what's the werewolf, the word with the liner, lichen. We must take that of the DNA and we must, and we will kill the and it was just like, fuck it out. You're like, Jesus Christ. And then you even get to Frankenstein, who tells you a little bit of no, but I know you need this and they need me and I need that, and it's like, okay, great. Frankenstein was also, although I like some of the things they do with his design, I don't like his design. I think it just looks far too giant and far too oversized and far too it's too big. It looks too much like a giant costume on top of someone.
I liked his design. I liked that his brain was like detracting.
I like the design. One bit I do like is when they first come into the cave, they smash his head. And
they bonk his head.
Several parts of his head comes apart. I really liked. I thought that was really cool, and I got more with the design as I went. But at first looking at it, I was like, it just like. It's too like blue in the wrong way kind of blue, and it's too like it just.
I liked him. He was just such a fucking cuck. He's just like hiding in a cave, and then he's just
like moaning. He's like, kill me, but I want to live. Later on, he's like, I want to live,
but I want to live.
But yes, I want love, and I want friendship. It's like, that's Frankenstein, I guess. But
and then they put him in they knock him out and they put him in that tomb. And I'm just like, Frankenstein, did you put up a fight? Like, you look like you're still on the same slab that you were asleep on. I just thought that he was like a fucking
He
was a
was
wet
just dull.
lettuce.
That's what I mean. He was just like dull in that way. Like
I was glad when I saw him in pain when he was being electrocuted.
which is not how you
that.
should feel about
No.
Frankenstein's monster.
I wanted him to die. I had
Yeah.
no sympathy for this revolting, rotten creature. You know.
Let's just say, when they were in action mode, because I didn't have to give a shit about whatever crap they were saying, then I was enjoying it. So when Frankenstein is later gliding down those rope and like swinging across the whole top and like falling through the air, I'm like, I kind of like the look of you now because you're falling to your death. But
Yeah, you're falling to your death.
and
You're
it's the
about
same
to
with
die.
the same with Dracula. It's like when Dracula was in his bat form, I was like, yeah, you look kind of cool. I can deal with this. But when he was, with his fake little wiggy hair back kind of thing, I was just like, and doing his little Germanian kind of accent.
I love it.
I was just like,
I can't believe he
Who
was like, I saw Gary Oldman. I want
well, he said he liked that.
It's so weird.
Like kind of Gary Oldman kind of style, thinking that that's what Gary Oldman was doing, hammy.
Yeah, he does remind me of more like a classic one. He's very.
I think it was Gary Oldman and one of the older ones. I don't think it was Bela Lugosi.
No, it doesn't. He doesn't strike me quite as Bela Lugosi.
I can't think of who
Or
the
Christopher
other
Lee.
one is. It's not those two. No, it was another one.
But he strikes me as
I
almost
said Louis Guzman.
He doesn't strike me as Louis Gooseman or Loose Gooseman, but he almost reminds me a bit of like Frankenstein in like Monster Squad.
Yeah,
Or
that kind of
something like that, where it is a bit like over the top and it's really camp and it's like
proper,
that kind
yeah.
of thing. And he's having fun with it, I think
It's
he
not
was
fun.
taking
It's
himself
having
too
fun.
seriously.
I just generally just think it just borders on such a cheesy level when all of them are kind of like that. But at the same time, I don't feel quite like Hugh Jackman quite matches that tone, and even Kate Beckinsale Kate Beckinsale is doing actually a quite good Eastern European accent. It could have gone way cheesy. In fact, the brides sound like
They
sound like the really bad, like stereotypical kind of one. Whereas Kate Beckinsale actually sounds quite like natural and fluent. I was actually quite surprised at her sounding like so good as it did.
Yeah.
So they almost sound too like, it's like those two. If you took those two characters and then decided to do a crossover with Van Helsing and the Mummy and put those characters together, that would totally work because of those characters.
Yeah.
But if you put Rick O'Connell suddenly in the middle of all of these monsters in this like thing, it just wouldn't, because it's just not the same world. It's just not. It's too corny. It's too cheesy. You need that balance. Like you could definitely have Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing and Rick O'Connell, and they'd work perfectly together because they are kind of more grounded. And that's the problem. Like it's like those guys work like that, and yet it kind of feels like they slightly don't totally exist in the same world at the same time. And then so because of that, it just kind of, because they're playing cheesy and they're almost playing it straight, and I'm not saying I want him to be like I'm like a goofball of Van Helsing, but because of that, it felt a little bit like too much of a mix of a genre, so it started to feel a little bit like basically you guys are the good actors and you guys are really hammy and shy kind of actors.
Yeah,
And
I guess the villains are naturally going to be more over the top. I'd rather the villains be over the top than the heroes. Then the villains are just playing it straight, and Van Helsing's fucking really hammy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a little bit fair. They said there was a James Bond thing. Actually, James Bond tends to have James Bond is this straight-laced cool dude, but sometimes his villains are like proper like hammy, like stroking a.
I was going
to say stroking a cat, but I was going to use a different word for cat. I was like, why am I making it dirty?
No.
I'm trying to make it crude on purpose.
You saying that he's stroking is
stroking's enough. He's just stroking.
He's just stroking whilst James Bond comes in. He's like, Bond, it's just beating off, just real relaxed with it,
There you go. That's what the Dracula stroking it off to Hugh Jackman.
That's where they got like. He called Richard Roxburgh and he was like, have you seen the James Bond villains, where they're just sat there, just stroking and then the light cut out. And he's like, I'm just going to beat off at every scene. Just beat it.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the real pluses for this film, as I said, I do believe that this film works really well as an action film.
Yeah.
And I just think that what lets this film down, and I think what I always had a slight problem with this film, is just it's mainly due to any parts that are not the action scenes. It's like as a mindless film, I can take this on that level. When it gets to any of the exposition or general, just like the characters talking and stuff, I just didn't think it worked. I just didn't think the dialogue sounded like believable. It just sounded too corny, too cheesy, too over. Yeah, it just didn't sound natural to me. But one of the things I really do like, for the most part, or mentioned, is those visual touches for the monsters.
Yeah.
I do like the look of different... Like I said, I've got kind of things with Frankenstein, because I just think it looks a bit too... It reminds me too much of the Thing from Fantastic Four. Like that bulky where you got a dude and you've just put a huge layer on top of him, and it's just a bit too...
I can see why.
But not that it doesn't have like those cool, but because they want to have things like the brain and stuff, like, it feels like they then had to make it even bulkier for that to work. You see what I mean? It's that. So I kind of get that. I've got problems with that kind of somewhat, but the other set, like the werewolf looks perfectly like classic kind of I think, and I like the fact there's differences.
Yeah, the differences.
So her brother, for instance, Kate Beckinsale's Anna, I think it is.
Yeah.
Her brother, who has a very kind of foreign sounding name.
Vic or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. His werewolf doesn't look the same as Hugh Jackman's werewolf. They have differences, like their body. Oh, and actually what I really loved was when her brother first changes. Yes. I love that skin tearing away. I thought was the really
climb up
cool.
The wall. It was very. It felt very much like a tribute to like a bit of American Werewolf, where it is.
But it's just that effect. Even though it was like CGI,
it looked good.
There was something almost like really like comforting in that. Like it's like watching, it's like watching a video of, I don't know, when someone's smoothing something else. There was so weirdly, I felt quite soothing about the skin just like tearing away and revealing like the fur growing underneath. And then when he turns back, it's the opposite. So the fur starts to tear away and the skin starts to grow back. And I don't know why, but they were so perfectly going from like one layer to another layer. So it was like one of those videos where people watch like things get crushed by a machine to turn into like jelly or something, or like you just sat there like, I could... Well, I can't remember what there's a term for that, isn't there? But I could just sit there all day and watch someone's skin peel.
This is good, and it looked good for CGI. It looked good because
it did.
The problem was a lot of the like Underworld had it, where they just had absolute ass transformations.
Oh yeah,
and
they did practical, didn't they? They did quite practical ones.
I remember them doing CGI, and it looked absolute ass.
I remember being really turned off because I remember it being. They definitely had, at least for the first one anyway. They have practical ones, kind of like Dog Soldiers.
Well, Dog Soldiers
the
vampires looked awesome,
but Dog Soldiers kind of worked because it only is really revealed at the very end. A lot of that, so it kind of worked. Whereas in this one, it was meant to be like all about like battling werewolves and stuff. So it's kind of like, when you've got like that running towards you and half the film's built around that costume, it just doesn't work as well. I mean, it's not like American Werewolf, where it's also like, because of American Werewolf, you're like, well, how comes that could look so fucking awesome, but you now look like a bloke in a hairy wig.
Well, the problem was, and this is like something that I do really like about this film, is that like Prisoner of Azkaban came out, and obviously that had a werewolf in it. And everybody starts creaming their pants, and it's like, the new design of the 2000s is for a werewolf. We can't have them be hairy and like big and muscly anymore. They got to look like fucking whippets, Like they're just like real smooth skin, like fucking elongated, beady heads, like absolute shit and like scamper around.
Whereas this is like
an actual beast. Proper hairy beast. This is
full on, exactly as you imagine Hugh Jackman's chest would look when he takes his top off. Just
before werewolves went woke.
Before he had to go smooth for muscles, but
but I don't know. I think like the werewolves looked good and the transformations looked good. It's just like one of the main things that I kind of don't really like about the film is that it's just like there's this random convenience where they're like, well, we're trying to find Dracula's castle. We've got Frankenstein. There's a really good scene at the ball, where it reveals that all of them are vampires.
Yeah.
It's very strange though, because you have the really cool carriage chase where you have the brides and you have the werewolf. They're trying to get Frankenstein in the carriage. It's quite, it's real action packed.
It's a really good action scene.
Yeah,
that one's actually like not the flying around them, but a lot of that is more practical than a lot of the rest of the film, and it is really noticeably good. Like why that does work better.
And one of the brides dies then, but then when they get to Budapest the next day or later, it's like it's the daytime when one of the brides is about.
Yeah.
And the bride takes Anna, and it's like the middle of the day.
But
it's really weird.
It is the middle of the day when they do that attack on the village. It's the day.
But it's dark.
It's
the clouds,
misty, isn't it? It's all clouded over. Yeah.
Whereas it's not during that, I swear.
Yeah.
I remember watching. I mean, especially when she gets to Budapest.
It doesn't feel like it plays on the sunlight bit that much. To be honest, it feels like they kind of let that rule go out of the window. I guess.
That's halfway through the film, because when they have the first fight, the sun comes out and they all hide.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
I mean, I one thing I didn't is the plot kind of really hanging around this whole baby Dracula bat things is one kind of part that I feel like is just like. It didn't really do much for me, to be honest, and I didn't really like the designs of the baby bat. Like they are one bit of the CGI that didn't really look good. It did look like little blobs of fat things like flying about, and they weren't really like. If you're gonna do something like that, it feels like they should look like the most terrifying creatures that come. Oh yeah, the egg sacs. Like again, I think they were practical.
They
look
practical.
Yeah, so those look really cool. I really liked those. But when you actually see these like little things, like there's one when I think they accidentally step back into one and break a bit of it, and then the hand comes through.
Yeah,
that's cool. But when you actually see them and you see like those like hundreds of them all like layered up and stuff, it just doesn't look good, and it doesn't add anything to the film because he's constantly trying to like. You're just kind of there like. Dracula, like what? Like, why do you really need to have these millions of
I mean, I guess
what does that help in? It also it's like classic, like just thinking like I feel like Dracula just wouldn't give a shit about that anyway. He doesn't care for his children, So what? Like he wants this as like a way to rule the world or something like that, like with his bats or. That was the logic I was like kind of losing in coming. I was like, I don't really know why you really want to do this. Like, why is this such an important thing to get all these monsters and really at the end of the day risk your life by bringing a lot of people that are trying to kill you to you.
Yeah,
just to bring these bats to life. It's just it's that kind of bit, and I feel like the whole quest for this to have that happen is the part where the film feels a little bit overlong and a little bit overstuffed because they're trying to shove too many ideas in, and I feel like just the idea of Van Helsing trying to seek Dracula and Dracula sending the bride, and like stopping them from getting near and him having that. I don't think you needed the whole like I'm going to create this bat army, kind of. It just adds too much.
And going back to what they look like.
Yeah,
they don't look great, but then you end up a bit stuck because you're just like. They look like these kind of deformed bat things, and they don't look good. But then what do you have? Do you just have like these egg sacs they break open and it's just babies in there? Like helpless babies.
I mean, I know there's the fib, but I just think... Have? Yeah, I mean, but even if... This is one of those things when a bat creature in CGI, in poor CGI... is different than if you had a bunch of practical bat baby looking things, which
could have probably done better,
which would have at least felt a bit more kind of that there's just that line between that's the line that comes with practical where even if you see something and you go that's a puppet, you can still sometimes respect that more than that's a really bad CGI bat. I mean it's that line between it. It's like it's again I'm just thinking of The Rock again in The Mummy Returns, just going like you're just looking at that going like why did you CGI The Rock? Like, why didn't you just CGI the legs? Why of all the things? Why did you decide? You know what? The only way to make him look real because the top of his body just looks like The Rock, but a amorphous blob version. But and you're just there like, what made you go, oh, I'm just not going to go practical with this? Instead, it's like
graft his skin on
The Rock
jelly.
wasn't available for like this scene, like what, the only scene he's in the film.
Scene, yeah.
Then don't do The Rock, be the Scorpion King.
weird.
But I think it is that line between like, there is a point when like practical works like better than others, and this film does pull off scenes that look actually like really strong for the CGI, you know, at the time.
Yeah.
As I said, like building some of the towers and the cities that are just like some of them mainly CGI is like quite impressive.
Yeah. And then some of the sets they make are really good.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as I said, like I'm not saying it looks perfect. They look about the same as say like a Harry Potter, like, you know, when you have I think in like the first one or two when they have
like
the
troll.
It looks about like that level of like thing. But at the same time, it didn't take me out of the scene when he was like talking and acting, and that's somewhat raised by Robbie Coltrane, I think, doing the voice and bringing something into short scene, bringing something to the character a little bit. But it didn't take me out of that scene having that be like a fully CGI. I was actually like, oh, that's actually kind of cool for the side. At the time, I was like, I forgot that completely.
Yeah.
So I was like, at the time, I would have thought that would be a pretty awesome scene. Like people seeing that would have been like, oh
this
what
is
fucking hell,
class.
that's cool.
It is. It's a cool opener, you know.
You know, and also to show him in that way, because the only other time I could think of it is in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, was it?
Which was around the same time.
Is it Extraordinary Gentlemen?
There was the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I always get it confused with the League of Gentlemen.
Well, I'm mixing it up with the British TV.
Yeah, the League of Gentlemen.
League of Gentlemen. That is the League of Gentlemen. Mixing it up with, you know,
local people.
Local. I mean, that's an absolute class show.
Local things for local people.
The Sean Connery League of Extraordinary, whereas in that one they show him, but they've done like a practical, like big, muscular, like weird thing, which
Richard Roxburgh was in that as well.
Doesn't you know, and again, but even in that version, it doesn't totally work because it looks so obviously like this big, thick kind of thing. But they both have their merits. But I liked this kind of flying around.
On Letterboxd.
Did I give it a 3 star?
You gave it a 3 star.
I've not seen that film in a very long time. I'm surprised I gave. That one I remember seeing in the cinema. I remember having a bit of a nostalgia bit for that one. To be fair, I quite liked that at the time. I thought that was kind of a cool one, but it probably has aged terribly.
It was 2.5 on overall whilst Van
Helsing. I mean, to be honest,
2.6.
in my head, I feel like if I rewatched that, I would be putting that about the same as I put Van Helsing, and they're very similar in my head kind of films, but one's went a bit more practical, to be honest. One's a bit more CGI.
I don't think I ever saw it. I saw it and I don't remember it. You know.
I think if you like this film, you would enjoy that film.
I enjoy this film, so I'm gonna have to definitely.
You're gonna have to watch that one. I've lost track of where my.
That's right. I think it's the. I think we're kind of getting towards the part where they actually do go to. Dracula's castle. You have the bit at the when they arrive at Budapest, and it's during the day, and the bride of Dracula says, "We'll swap Anna for Frankenstein, bring him to this masquerade ball," and then there is one bit I like, and I would have liked to have seen a bit more, to be honest, where they leave Frankenstein in the grave, and he's like, you know, isn't Dracula going to be able to get him? And Van Helsing's like, not unless he has any help from the dead. And you see like a grave open. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that. Maybe that would be quite cool. But you know, we get a scene where Anna's dancing with Dracula, and then it's revealed that everybody there is a vampire. Van Helsing swoops down on a fucking vine or something, a vine in the middle of this ballroom, like George of the Jungle, swoops her up, and then Dracula's like, "Get that lad, fucking have him."
And then they release those bombs.
Yeah, they release that bomb then.
Turn them all into
skeletons, which is cool.
Oh yeah, because they're all vampires, aren't they?
They're all vampires.
So they're like light bombs, aren't they?
It's like the power of the
light
sun.
does have the.
It does, yeah, it does. I don't get it.
It does have an effect.
I don't get it,
because I'm pretty sure that's what the bombs are meant to be. They're meant to be like bright light.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it has the power of the sun works again. 15 minutes later, you know, maybe it's like a certain time of day. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean that. To be honest, talking about that the Frankenstein part, that is also a bit. You know, they bury him back in that just for the sake of doing that, and it feels like you have like the carriage scene and then that ball scene, and then you're like, And it's basically like, oh fuck, yeah, we've got to get Frankenstein back out now, don't we? To move the plot along, we've got to get Frankenstein back out now. So it all feels a little bit like, well, there was no point in fucking burying him in the first place, but it feels like we've got to get him back.
Yeah, take him with you.
Yeah, and then
or send him to Rome or something. Let them just kill him.
And then once he is in it, he just seems to be like doddering about and getting like in the next scrape after a next scrape. And Frankenstein's just getting like, I'm in this. Oh no, I'm on this. Oh, I'm off the tower.
I'm in a bridge.
I need to battle. Oh, they're trying to kill me.
Everybody's trying to kill me. Yeah, because you're fucking annoying. Everybody hates you. You're an abomination to man and God and science. We should just destroy you. And then this is the part that I kind of don't. I'm always like, it's really shit. Is when they're like back at Anna's family like ancestral home, and there's that big like map of Transylvania, and they're like, my father and my father's father and my father's father's father, and it's fucking a whole line of lads who came from fucking ball sacks sat there for days and for hours on end staring at this map trying to figure out where it came from. And Van Hel, and then somebody's like, Carl is telling the story, and he's like, oh mate, this is the gateway, and then he moves a fucking table and there's like a bit of it missing, and it's like, oh, this is the bit that we've got. It's so convenient.
Yeah,
and
it's like, oh no,
you're telling me like hundreds of generations or like generations have sat here and been like, nah, I'm going to keep this slightly obscure.
I'm not going to
move a chair.
I'm not even going to. I'm not even going to touch it. I'm not going to move that bit.
Yeah, it's so shit. You know.
Yeah, I've already said that I generally think that the story outline and the whole basically the scripting of this is not good.
No,
it's an impressive kind of monster movie action film that is sadly brought down by the lack of a real which is too bad, because I think there is a lot of good ideas here that could have been a really good franchise if I just think they needed a little bit of reining in. I think because even on like The Mummy, so Stephen Sommers did write The Mummy, but the story for The Mummy was written by several people, so it was several like versions that got to that point. And even other things he's done have had like several writers, but this is the one when he did it all himself. Kind of thing. And I think he needed someone else to come in and go, you know what? No, you don't need that. Bring that down. Tighten that up. Bring those things together. And, think about some fucking plot holes here, mate. Because this shit don't make sense. I think it feels like he'd made one of the biggest hits, in recent memory at the time. He'd made a huge film. They were like, here you go, here's your check. We're basically, we want more monster movies. We think this is going to be huge for us. We're Universal. We should have monster movies. You can make whatever movie you want. We trust you because you made The Mummy and you made The Mummy Return. Both of those were a huge hit for us. So do what you want. And it's one of those cases of giving someone maybe a little bit too much free reign. Yeah. Not reining them in enough to be like, oh shit, we really should have looked at these daily, shouldn't we? We should have checked what was going on here.
Because The Mummy's quite sleek in its storytelling. And then I think once you get to, the Scorpion King is kind of it's a bit more bloated. Whereas this one, it almost feels like if they'd have fucked Frankenstein off, and if they'd have kept it as like we said, that first hour, or maybe had a few more scenes and made it just be like an hour and 25 minutes, an hour and a half, it would be like a lot tighter, and you'd be able to look at the performances and be like, maybe they're hammy and I either like that or I don't like that, but at least like it flows and it's kind of like a straightforward and it's not too bloated. I think once you start getting like fucking Frankenstein and so this person gets kidnapped, and then we'll have trade him, and then he fucking gets kidnapped anyway, so we might as well have just traded him. And then, this fucking big map that we haven't unearthed is a doorway. Yeah. It kind of starts.
It's like that. It is that classic. Here's the MacGuffin, and here's the next one, and here's another one, and here's that one, and we got to bring all of that together to make one kind of story here. But it's just and then you've also got the way that obviously they're mixing the mythology of different monsters, and that thing gets a bit convoluted by the different like ways they're trying. The amount of different things it feels like they're trying to do, like say Dracula and what he can do and who he's got and how he can use his powers and what he can actually do with his powers and how he is the cure to the werewolf for some reason, just to be a plot device, just because Hugh Jackman suddenly, Van Helsing suddenly is attacked by a werewolf, and then it's like, oh yeah, Frankenstein's like,
he's got a cure.
Dracula can do that.
Yeah,
so just get it off Dracula, mate. He's got one. He's just got one, and it just so happens that the one cure, the only cure he's got, which you kind of start to think, well, why the fuck do you want that Dracula? Why would you keep that about? Because you're using them for your own good. I've got it. I've got it in one. I've got one, literally one. Because when they said that Dracula is the cure, I was thinking as in like his blood, like it's his bile, his blood, literally him, not a syringe inside some kind of acid in the middle of the thing. He's got one thing, and he's thinking, and it's also just that kind of like, so it's one thing in there, so someone comes in, and the only thing you've done to deter them, apart from a cage around the thing, is like, no. So how do we stop them from ever getting this? All right, we put it in acid, basically, because no one could just knock this phase off and step back. No one would do that. No. That's never going to happen, is
obviously,
it?
You see something extremely valuable in a clear liquid, you just stick your hand in there, of course.
Exactly, and it's just that. But it just is, and it's also just more to me of the fact of like, I liked the idea actually somewhat, because we know that Dracula is ancient and has a very special like biology to him and things like that. That yes, somewhere within his biology or within whatever actually is in his blood, or whatever his blood is, or whatever is the bile inside of him, could actually have some kind of healing ability within it that might actually stop the werewolf. So I was like in my head going, oh yeah, I kind of like the idea that actually they need to kill Dracula to basically use something from him in order to cure themselves. I was like, that kind of works. So that's why I was even more like, oh, you meant a fucking syringe in a jar.
Syringe in a jar.
It literally is just like, and it's just that like, look at it like, it feels like it's literally only there for the sole purpose of giving Anna and the other guys something to do while Hugh Jackman like while Van Helsing goes off to fight Dracula. It's like, they needed something to do. We've still got one of the brides left, so we need to have somewhere for them to meet up, but they need to have their own story. I need to have an extra subplot on top of the several subplots I've already got going at once, with Frankenstein and with Dracula and with the babies and with the townsfolk. I need several of these to go. So it's like, no, what I need to do is have another one for them to go down, and they're gonna have a syringe, but obviously he knows better. He's like, never put your hand in that kind of liquid. It's like, I knew that was acid. It's just so like, and it's long-winded for an idea that could have been so simplified and actually connected to Dracula instead. I just kind of, I didn't laugh out loud, but I was just sat there like, why?
I've also, it's something weird. Like he'll be a werewolf and he'll turn at the full moon, but he won't stay as a werewolf, or he can be cured as long as it's before the last fucking chime.
I mean,
so he's got
I didn't mind the whole like the idea of Van Helsing going into battle is the fact that he could get into these kind of scrapes and stuff like that. So I was fine with the idea of the werewolf attacking him, and it adds something throughout the film. I don't really see what was wrong with just having Van Helsing, because he's a badass character.
Yeah, anyway. I don't think he needed to be a werewolf.
And this version of Van Helsing technically does somewhat push away from, because he's meant to be like all these different things, isn't he? Like a historian, a philosopher, an archaeologist. He's literally like every fucking thing that you can do. He's a doctor. You can do whatever the fuck. He's meant to be this brilliant guy kind of thing, and I can't say they quite like sell all of those parts of him.
No,
he's kind of just this action dude. He's a mysterious badass, but I liked that kind of I didn't mind it. It didn't need it. It would have worked fine without it. But I was like, okay, fine. at least there's like somewhat of an additional stake here that you've added in.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. So he needs to, and the scenes when he starts like acting out or going, big, like his body's changing or he's getting violent towards the rest of them really works. But it just all felt like extra add-on.
Yeah.
That didn't need it to be in the film kind of thing. It's just this is where I kind of think like the campy cheesy was fine, but it definitely felt like it could have done with like we've said, The Mummy is a much more streamlined film.
Yeah.
It's literally like we go there, we try to find it, we accidentally release them. Shit, we've got to try and like get away from it. Oh no, she's part of what he wants. We've got to protect her. Okay, haven't protected her. Now we've got to kill the mummy. That's it. That's the film. You know what I mean? That it's a simple classic. Looking at the thing, and they looked at classic monster movies and went, "That's the story. Basically, we just need to adapt that, and we're going to add some more action. We're going to make it more of an action film." This felt like it literally took like several of those monster movies and went, right, well they did that in that film, let's put them all together and let's just make it up.
That'll work.
The mishmash, it's like they took the mishmash too far. Just having the monsters was enough. You didn't need to mash all of the mythology so much that you needed a million subplots.
I think they should have cut Frankenstein out, and they should have not had Van Helsing become a werewolf. Because my main thing is, I noticed like the CGI up until they got to the castle, I thought was kind of okay. The special, like the practical effects and the sets looked great. Like when they were running along that bridge and Igor's trying to zap Faramir. And a lot of the rooms look good, and when the kind of area that they've got Frankenstein chained up, and that kind of laboratory looked really cool.
Yeah, they were impressive.
The sets look great, but then it's when we got to the very like end, and he's like, only a fucking werewolf can kill me or something like that, and he morphs into a werewolf, and then Dracula's like, all right, I'm gonna morph into my ultimate form, instead of being like, whilst you're morphing, I'm just gonna fly away. Which he should have done. He's like, I morph, and then it almost felt like, do you remember when it was like early 2000s, and you would like a scene like this would get uploaded to YouTube, just the fight scene, and then somebody would like put like Godsmacked, I Stand Alone over it, or like some kind of really like cringe new metal song. That's what it felt like. It was just like a CGI fucking slugfest. And the CGI didn't look good.
It's a little bit of the I didn't have so much of a problem with the actual like effect. I thought they were okay in this part, but it's what we talked about recently with Abigail. It's the 2000 like. We can't just have two men fighting. It can't just be standard. They need to have something special happen to them. They both need to become like an equal in some way. You both need to be vampires. You both need to be vampires. Or you have to have that and that. And it can't just be a standard. It can't just be Van Helsing finally fighting Dracula.
Or him and Anna fighting Dracula.
Yeah, it can't just be that. No, it has to be like the full on, like, you must become this. You have to turn into it, that classic, like we said with other films of the time. Like, and this was somewhat following that boom, and includes Hugh Jackman, who was part of that boom of superhero, just that first wave when it wasn't quite so like
Hulk,
thought out, or
when Hulk fought the giant.
Or like
I remember
we said about like Blade, the first Blade film has like. The first Blade film is a pretty good film until it gets to the very end when it's like, dude is like, I'm going to turn into I'm basically now another Blade. I'm another Blade. Now it's both Blade versus Blade. Or, you always have that in certain superheroes, or always in the origin film. It's like the opposite of the character.
Yeah.
Like I'm this dude and you're anti this dude.
Yeah. We have to be equal in power. Because God forbid.
We've been on the same course. That's why you were able to have half the screen time. I'm just the same as you, but I've decided to be dark.
I don't know. I just felt like it reminded me of like when I was 10 or 11 and the Hulk film with Eric Bana came out, and I went to go and see it with my granny, and I remember watching him fight the like irradiated dogs or whatever CGI, and I remember watching it thinking, this is fucking ass. And then I looked at my granny, and she just had no clue what was going on, and I could just imagine her thinking like, God, I've watched like cinema evolve, and what the fuck is this? It's like it's just like
we went through all this for a fucking CGI poodle, fighting like a hulky CGI poodle,
for just somebody to be like, all right, now it's like, all right, Hugh and Richard, you're gonna have your big final fight now, and they're both ready, and they're like, all right, cut. Some fucking dude is just gonna put it on the computer.
Some dude in,
yeah. So you could pretend you've been beaten up, and that's the end of the film. You're dead. You know, don't worry about dying. We'll just have some fucking nerd on a computer do it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, shout out to all the special effects crew out there. You do good work. However,
they will manipulate your body, and they will change you. They will make you so no one else will ever see you the same way again.
Yeah, you know, the fucking AI me on this.
Or they'll make some AI or some CGI of you murdering someone and it'll be taken away.
Yeah. But I don't know, it felt like I was watching it and I was like, fuck man, this is the one thing I didn't like about these horror action things. You know, it was like all of the Resident Evil films.
Because I didn't like Dracula, I didn't mind seeing him in getting to see him in that full bat form. So I didn't mind him fighting in that form because I quite liked that form. I didn't mind that,
but I would have liked. I think
I would have liked him like that. Yeah, I wouldn't have. You don't want the standard Dracula fight in Van Helsing anyway. I think you still needed that one, but I think Hugh Jackman should have just been Hugh Jackman.
Yeah,
he should have just been Van Helsing, like at the beginning with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde fighting against Dracula.
Yeah, that would have been awesome, man. That would have been the best.
You didn't need to make him a werewolf because it's not part of his story anyway.
And it convolutes the whole film because now, like you said, fucking Anna's got to go and find the one cure that Dracula keeps, and somehow
just all to set up for the fact that she's going to
give him.
She's going to stab it into him, but he's going to kill her, which was actually I completely did. I didn't remember most of this film. But that bit I was definitely like, I didn't expect her to die.
You cried.
So I didn't expect that to happen, and that was one part that I thought, actually, fair play. You know, when you've got a main actress and you're thinking, oh, we're going to make a sequel, and the studio's already thinking you're going to make, and you're probably at the time thinking we're going to get a sequel, to kill off the other main actor in the film, giving it a kind of ending is actually quite a bold move. Although it did go into my head, I was like, fucking hell, Hugh Jackman in his films, he with his leading ladies. Why does he always end up holding his dead leading lady in the mother? You know, he's in several films where he is literally. I mean, there's X-Men with Jean Grey where he kills her and then screams in his arms.
Of course.
As Werewolf here, he kills her and screams in his arms. There's another one as well where he kills her and he screams and he's like, ah!
I literally sent that gif of him as a werewolf holding her dead body and howling and said, that's me crying over your dead body, by the way. I fucking love it. It's so fucking funny.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what I mean, that him as that, but yeah, I was just thinking that, I was like, why does Hugh Jackman seem to have a bit of a stereotype of the fact that basically he's going to murder his leading lady?
Because if his leading lady doesn't die, how can he see the fucking spirit in the sky at the end of the film? You know, they have to die for that.
He has to see that other side.
Yeah, he has to see the other side to know.
He has to see a giant crying Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, he has to burn her and then ride off and then just end. Yeah, you know,
have you seen? I did like. It wasn't there. Like I was like, fine. Her being kind of the clouds is kind of like it didn't actually look as bad as like. I'd read something about that scene, so I was thinking this is going to look terrible, isn't it? But it actually didn't look that bad. But it was just more in my head. I was like, where did the inspiration? It's like, have you seen The Lion King? You know Mufasa in the clouds. Well, we're going to have Kate Beckinsale's giant head in the clouds, and she's reunited with her dead family, and it's like this beautiful sad scene where Hugh Jackman on a fake sunset background is going to stare up at the sky and he's going to cry because he just murdered that woman.
He just killed her. I mean, I'm sure that I remember there being an alternative ending. You know, I'm sure that there was like another one where it kind of ends where it started, like I was trying to find it, and I found an article you might like on Looper called "The Ending of Van Helsing Explained," in case you need to understand what happens. But I'm sure I remember. I'd love somebody watching this going, "What the fuck? What the fuck is going on, man? I need to know."
I think every film that comes out now, they have that for every film now, and like at one point in time, I think they would have those for like Inception, when you're like, yeah, fair enough. I want to know what people are thinking, but now they have it for like fucking Super Mario Brothers the movie, or so. Like, what was that? What was that interesting ending where the animated film ended, or how the fuck did Despicable Me 4 end this time?
I just love the fact that somebody would like look at it and be like, "What the." Who was that werewolf at the end? Yeah. Where was Van Helsing? You just like missed that whole fucking storyline.
Did she die? Like, why was she dead?
Why is she in the sky? I need to read that.
Wait, did she transform into a cloud?
Yeah.
Is she a cloud monster now?
You can see it if you go onto looper.com. If you do need, it was on the 8th of December 2022. So nearly 18 years later, they explain the ending. Somebody went 18 years without understanding it.
I don't understand what happened.
But the alternative ending I remember is after he's fucking burnt her body and seen her in the sky, we then get Van Helsing somewhere else doing monster hunting, and he's fighting somebody else. And he's running off in the city, and somebody's like, "I'm gonna get you, Van Helsing." But maybe I've merged like another film in with
maybe
that.
Just made this up. Maybe
it's made up. Maybe I was so desperate for a sequel.
You were screaming at it. Unless you didn't watch the animated one by chance, did you?
No, I watched. It was Hugh Jackman.
Like a half an hour one, and it's based in London. I think it takes place. I think it might be before actually. It might be a prequel, not a sequel.
But either way, he went off on his horse or his carriage, and he was very much a wanted man at the end. Because he's a wanted man at the start. Yeah. Unless somehow my mind just like, I went, that was so fucking good, put it back to the start and just watched it again.
I can't actually remember the opening. Maybe that's just the opening.
He's a wanted man in the
opening.
Maybe,
that's what someone says.
Fucking maybe it is because at the end.
I think that is. It says the person says about you're a wanted man. Yeah. I think you've just repeated yourself back. I think you just made up an alternate ending by taking the beginning.
I didn't want it to end, so I just watched.
That's why they needed to explain. It literally says on there, Rob Kia. This explanation is for you because you don't understand how endings work. You think every film just loops back around to the beginning.
It's a new story every time. Like, what the hell? I've seen this one.
Yeah. The interesting part about Schindler's List is it both ends with death, and then the death starts again, but in the same deaths.
It's a perpetual war.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know how I fucking did that.
I think you did loop your brain back round.
I did. I am reading about the end, and somebody. So one of the questions that Stephen Sommers had in mind was, what if Van Helsing was hot? Which I understand, But yeah,
that sounds about right for him as a director.
Yeah.
What if he was hot?
What if he was hot? What if he was shirtless all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
shirtless. I mean, I can't. Is he? I think again, for some reason, Hugh Jackman is shirtless after he's murdered his love interest.
Yeah.
Because he's shirtless in that scene. I don't know about any other scenes, but he's definitely shirtless when he's killed her.
Yeah. It's very much, like.
I mean, his tear at the end as he watches the sky and he thinks to himself, I was ready to pipe.
Yeah.
You didn't let me.
He was fucking ready, wasn't he?
They're even getting, it's just the fact that also, she's dead, but you almost think more of her, she's dead, but we'll bury her, and then in the sequel we'll revive her, or something like that.
Yeah.
But this one is, literally, they don't even leave her open. I feel like they do not leave it open at all for her to cut. They say she's alive in an afterlife, but it's literally right, you're dead, we've burnt your body, and we've shown you off into Cloudland, into the sky. So you're done. You're not
done,
coming
mate.
back.
Why would you
I almost 100% know that if they had got a sequel, they always do. Even when certain characters die, the studios go, so yes, all the cast need to return, and it's did you see the first film?
Yeah, no.
It's all the studio executives. We don't watch films.
We don't watch films. We just make them.
We make films.
Yeah.
It's like this and like that. It's like, so Kate Beckinsale's in the cat. No, she died and we burnt her body. But it's all about monsters and creatures. You can bring, but no, not really. Like it just doesn't work like that. It's like, we'll bring her back as a Force ghost or something.
Yeah,
That's your franchise, isn't it? Like that'll do. It's like, no, like no. We want to tell a new story with Van Helsing. No. You need to bring Dracula back. Yeah, same Dracula. It can't be different Dracula.
Why would you do it?
And then you need to bring Kate Beckinsale back. And you need to bring all these creatures. There can't be a single different. And it just is that shitty thinking in studios, because you just see it all the time. It's like you watch a film and you're like, why is that actor back again? They died in the last one. Or why can't we go off and tell a new story? It's like, no, you have to basically make the same film again, but you can change one villain. Yeah. It's like, well, okay. But
he needs to start the film as a wanted man. Just how he ended it, you know?
It's literally like that. Like, you imagine what they were like with certain films. They were like, so you're going to make The Lord of the Rings. Well, the first one did really well, where they just stayed in the Shire and they got to the land and things like that. In the sequel, we're going to make, it's going to be way bigger with more battles and things like that. Yeah, but the first film did really well because it was a little Shire and they just went on a little part of the journey. Could they possibly just go on a small journey this time? Because we're worried if it gets bigger that people won't be interested
people won't
anymore.
understand. They won't follow.
They won't follow it anymore.
If it's not the Shire,
it was like, we're going to introduce classic characters like Gollum and people like that properly this time. No.
Why don't we just show Frodo?
It's like, it's like literally that. It's like, it's all right. Well, I assume all of the cast are back. So Boromir, we need Sean Bean.
Yeah.
He pretty violently died at the end of the last. You have to have Sean Bean in it. Or we bring back Gandalf. Gandalf does come back. Have you not read the books? I don't read books. I make films.
I make films. If Sean Bean doesn't come back, who's doing the full frontal sex?
There was no nudity in the original. Yeah, but sequels have to up the level of penis.
Who's going to do the penetration?
And also, who's going to die if Sean Bean doesn't die in the sequel as well?
Yeah, somebody else will have to die. I mean, so summarise, because when just to go back and to wrap up. We did have on on the social media lounge, just to jump over there quickly. We did have one. So obviously we put up the films that we're talking about on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. And the one that we had was Lindsay, who hosts Girlfriends Podcast, who said, what a blast from the past. I haven't watched it since it first came out. And I wonder whether Lindsay will still enjoy it. Because when we were actually talking about covering this film, I was like, yeah, it's fucking class. And you were like,
said to me it was like the best.
I said it was the best film that you've ever seen.
You thought this would be the greatest thing ever, which is somewhat the nostalgia of a young 12-year-old boy who just learned to touch himself to Hugh Jackman.
Who else would I want to touch myself?
Okay, Beckinsale.
Yeah, one of the two. All the brides,
Oh yeah.
On a rotation.
Or Frankenstein.
or any of the cast.
The whole film is just a sex plot. So I mean, to be fair, this falls into the category of it's not as bad as I remembered. So I actually thought this was. I used to be like, why the fuck do people like this film? This film's terrible. Whereas I actually had a fairly good time with the action parts of it. And I've made it clear that I do think that this is a convoluted, overfilled film, which really could have been like used a streamline and down. And I think it would have been far better received if they just tightened the film up.
Yeah, I would.
But I think also I think at the time, Hugh Jackman only just off of Wolverine. So this is one of his earliest other roles apart from that, basically. And I think he does really well in the role for what he's given, because it's not like he's greatly fleshed out. What I mean? He kind of just is that dark, mysterious, and then it moves so quickly past other stuff and other things, that I don't want to say the other characters probably get more character development than even the main guy does. He's just kind of there as like, I'm going to solve the problem at the end. Don't worry. I'll solve the problem. Yeah. You might have to change me into a CGI werewolf, but I'll solve the problem.
And there's some weird kind of backstory about him being 400 years old and the left-handed god.
The one that killed vampire, that killed Dracula originally.
But to be honest, that very much feels like sequel territory.
Yeah, it doesn't really go into it fully, does it? It doesn't, it leaves it all as a tease, like, oh yes, you'll find that out in the sequel, which will definitely be coming out soon.
And then Van Helsing says that exact line and then winks at the camera. That's how it actually ended. I remember that now.
That was the alternate ending.
And it ended like Looney Tunes.
That's all, folks.
Yeah. But no, I think I think I agree with you. I think it's good fun. I think it's got a great soundtrack. I think the first kind of hour is much stronger and a much tighter film. Then once it starts to get a bit convoluted towards the end, we bring in Frankenstein's monster. We turn him into a fucking werewolf for some reason. And then it's just very convenient that
I think that's why we had fun with that first, like, why we may have both got to about the same point and got like, this was a good film.
Yeah.
We're like, this was a good film. And they're like, fuck, there's still an hour.
There's still an hour.
Like, what are we going to do? Haven't we pretty much got to the point by now?
And then it's just so fucking convenient, you know, that Dracula's castle is fucking right under their nose. Even when I was a 12-year-old boy and I watched this, you know, when my balls were still fucking starting to drop, I had my little onion hairs, you know, I was like, that's a really shit thing. My voice would be like, that's a really shit thing, you know. Even back then, I didn't like it, man. But overall, I think it's enjoyable. It's the kind of film that you can just watch and take your brain out to, you know?
Yeah,
hang brain
I think
to
so. Hang brain to it. Yeah. So a little bit, you had a little bit of a rose tinted kind of like,
course,
maybe it's not quite as strong as you maybe remembered.
Yeah, just went on longer than I expected.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's true. But yeah, I definitely think. But in terms of just a switch your brain off action film, you know, with horror monsters, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean that's it, man. Happy 20th birthday to Van Helsing. You're a big boy now, you know. Go and have fun. Have a good birthday, mate. You know, you've had your 18th, 21 next year, and then the next big one will be 30, and then 40, and by then you're just fucking sick of it, mate. You're just sick of life. But remember to hit that subscribe button. Come and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at CMTH Podcast, and please leave us a lovely review. We will see you next week. Bye bye.